Hi there and welcome to this webinar, Contract Audit, Building Self-Funded, Lower-Touch, High ROI Programs by PRGX. Contract audit programs can deliver significant value for businesses through a rigorous process of reviewing vendor contracts at risk for value cash leakage. However, most procurement departments lack the bandwidth and expertise to audit vendor contracts, leading to sustained and significant cost leakage over time. This webinar will outline how procurement departments can implement a self-funded contract audit program that returns cash back to the company, provides insights to stop leakage going forward, all with minimal impact in-house resources. Attendees will gain an understanding of how a multi-phase program can help procurement departments establish a self-funding mechanism to power a program that returns value through historical cost recoveries and future cost savings. Before we begin, I'll cover off some housekeeping items. If you're having trouble hearing us, if you've got any questions as we move throughout the webinar, please let us know in the question box. And be sure to follow us on our social channels, LinkedIn and Twitter, to keep up to date with PRGX and to join the conversation. So to get started today, I'll introduce our three presenters. John Daniels, VP of Audit Operations, has worked for PRGX, leading service delivery to some of North America's largest clients. Having started in recovery audit in 2001 and working across multiple industry verticals, he brings 35 years of industry experience and offers extensive supplier contract audit expertise. Jim Albrecht, VP of Audit Operations for PRGX, has over 20 years of recovery audit industry experience, serving a broad range of clients in retail and other industries, with experience in leading goods not for resale contract compliance programs for major retailers. He's passionate about reviewing new areas to increase the value of audits performed for clients, both in cash recoveries and lessons learned. Sarah Clark, PRGX Director of Product Development, started her career around 20 years ago focusing on business intelligence and application development, engaging a core focus on people, process and technology. Sarah joined the contract compliance team 12 years ago and brings extensive product and process knowledge. So at this time, I'll now hand over to Sarah.
Wonderful. Thank you for the warm welcome, Ashley. We've got a great agenda today focused on building self-funded, lower touch and high ROI programs. By self-funded, we're going to talk about how to build an audit program that funds itself. We hear from clients, especially right now, how challenging it can be to secure funding. We'll talk about how to circumvent those challenges. By lower touch, we're going to talk about how to mitigate bandwidth concerns while increasing coverage and enhancing key supplier relationships. Last but not least, we'll talk about how implementing these strategies can drive higher return on investment. Why structuring audit programs to maximize value is about more than just recoveries, and keys to building fully realized contract audit programs. After that, we'll discuss next steps to building your own robust audit program and then open it up for questions. So let's first get started by discussing what all the buzz is about around contract audit programs. So contract compliance has been getting a lot of press these last few years, and it's becoming a standard practice for many companies. Some of you might be wondering what a contract audit program is or why you should implement one, while others of you might already have sustainable wide-scale enterprise programs or any combination in between. In its simplest definition, contract compliance programs are a systemic way to review your supplier relationships against what was negotiated in your contracts, change orders, and other contractually binding mediums. Many of you have hundreds, if not thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of supplier relationships that you're spending millions or billions with every year. With all of the invoices, the projects, the contracts, etc., associated with those transactions, it's a lot to keep track of, and easier than most of us would like to admit for things to slip through the cracks. When it comes to contract audit programs, there's really two main types. The traditional programs, which focus on a high-risk vendor, whether they're high spend or have complex contracts or prior known issues. These programs are more focused deep dives into the vendor's billing practices, typically with on-site visits. The programs are great if you have a limited amount of oversight or sponsor bandwidth, as it's often a smaller vendor base that's audited, or if there's known leakage points that need to be addressed quickly or if your program objective is around recovering leakage and returning cash. The robust program is the other type, and it's all of that plus more. It's focused on building a sustainable program that delivers value not just to the bottom line, but also enhancing your supplier relationships. These programs cover everything from pre-event audits that review invoices before they're paid or projects before they're awarded, to diagnostic audits that can review contract language or process and operational controls, to accelerated audits, which cover continuous monitoring, cost true-up, and TCO or SLA verification, to real-time audits, which cover capital projects, plant turnarounds, and abnormal events, to specific risk audits, which cover lower spend vendors, non-financial risks, or targeted high-risk errors. These robust audit programs are considered a best practice, really a health check of sorts, to ensure the relationships are strong, performing well, and tighten up any loose ends where leakage might be occurring, or things start to derail before the train is completely off the track. Having a robust audit program in place can help to improve your supplier relationships and the contracts you have with your suppliers, providing lessons learned to address controls and leakage points from continuing. It's a proven method that we've seen over the last 20 or 30 years that we've been conducting contract compliance audit programs for our clients. And to talk more about the value that we've heard from these clients and how to gain the most benefit from your program, I'd like to turn it over to one of the contract audit experts, John Daniels.
Thank you, Sarah. That's a great recap of some of the things that we're hearing in the marketplace. Clearly, the visibility of contract and commercial compliant audits has been growing in the marketplace, and it's not just limited to the historical cost recovery value that can come out of these programs. Really, the way that the market has driven a shift in focus, an expanded focus, really, to how these contract audit programs deliver value for our clients. And so the more astute clients recognize that value certainly can and does come in the form of recovered historical leakage, but also, and even more importantly, when fully realized, the future cost savings and prevention value can far exceed the historical cost recovery value. And so it's really through a combination of those two key factors that we look at and define what commercial compliance audits can deliver in terms of total value to our clients. And so just speaking in a little bit more detail about each one of those components, first of all, when it comes to historical recoveries and the kind of the application of a traditional contract compliance audit, it's an excellent methodology that is utilized to not only identify those gaps and points of leakage and work to recoup some percentage of that historical loss value, but it's such a great it provides such a great insight into where there are problems that exist not only within that specific supplier relationship, but potentially systemically within your across your a broader range of your supplier relationships. And so when we look at these three components of sources of value, certainly historical cash recoveries are one key component, as we mentioned, but it's also the supplier-specific gap mitigation opportunities. So we're auditing supplier ABC. We find specific concerns within the contract or perhaps within the operations or finance as it relates to that specific supplier relationship. Then we can work with our clients to help mitigate those gaps, to close the gaps, and to prevent that leakage going forward. But then also, even beyond the specific gap mitigation, is that systemic gap mitigation, meaning we find an issue that may be prevalent across your much broader section of your supplier relationships. And when we can close those gaps, systemically, then obviously I think it's pretty clear that the value that can be returned from those corrective actions can be even that much more significant. And so this is what we mean when we talk about commercial compliance auditing and how value can be delivered. We really think it's the wave of the future. It is really truly the buzz of what's going on in the marketplace, and it really comes from a clear understanding of the fact that that not only that historical cost recovery, but the future cost savings value can be a tremendous impact to what these programs can provide. So this kind of brings us to this next concept, and I would say that in looking back, and as I think Sarah mentioned, we've been performing these kind of contract compliance audits for over 20 years in the industry now, and certainly there have been times in the recent past where the traditional contract compliance audit is looked at or has been kind of positioned in the marketplace to be one where really the central focus of value is around the historical cost recovery component. And clearly, hard cash recoveries are always important for programs like this, and it's not anything that should be diminished in terms of its importance. But when we look at programs such as these and really limit our perspective of how they can deliver value to the recovery opportunity only, then we believe we're limiting the ROI potential for the program. And so, by opening up, as the market has really dictated this kind of expanded viewpoint of where value can come in these programs, it really is linked. The broader value opportunity is linked to what we call here actionable knowledge. So, again, I think as I've already spoken to, so much is learned through the audit process, and some of those learnings are specific to the individual supplier under audit, but as mentioned, could also apply more systemically across your company. And so, by introducing that understanding and really a clear indication of the underlying root causes of what is driving leakage in your P2P continuum, and then taking that actionable knowledge and actually putting and implementing a solution in place, this is really where we can see the value multiplier for programs such as these really come into play. And we've got a variety of not only traditional approaches we take, such as the traditional contract compliance audit, but Sarah, in her intro, when she was talking about some of the other kind of extended procedures that we can apply, talked to pre-event auditing, diagnostic approaches, real-time approaches, specific risks, methodologies that we can employ. The key with these expanded methodologies is that they really can be customized to a specific need, a specific risk that we see in our clients' operating environment, and really root out the underlying root causes and get to a corrective action sooner and stop that leakage quicker. That's the goal, and this is another methodology, or this is a series of methodologies that really can also lead to actionable knowledge. And when we combine all these facets, we understand that the ROI that can be returned by these programs is many times greater than recovery audit alone. So I think the next natural question to ask is, well, what limits companies from fully realizing the benefits of of this kind of an expanded perspective in terms of driving the maximum ROI, through the implementation of a robust and sustainable program? And I think there's a few things that came to mind for us as we were talking about, presenting this piece today. And really, we do see a misalignment at times around a clear definition of what the objectives of these programs are. And where there's misalignment, there's usually underperformance. And so we've got some strategies today I think we can talk to help address that. I think funding has been an impediment. What we know is that in these programs, when we have clearly defined funding that is well aligned to the objective of the program, again, you're setting yourselves up for success. Limited program management resources. This is a big one. These programs do require an intensive amount of interface with suppliers and internal stakeholders, and certainly we I think we have some good ideas on how to address those kinds of limitations. And then looking at potentially sensitivity around key supplier relationships and how to mitigate those. So we have some strategies, and I'll speak to those here at a high level. These are what we consider to be the building blocks to success, and they really address those 4 key limiters that may exist. And when we can apply a specific strategy to address those underlying limiters, then we're setting ourselves up for success. So clearly, one building block that we're aware of is creating this top-to-bottom alignment around a clearly stated set of objectives for the program. We've got some more detailed discussion to come on each one of these, but that is a key, and that really comes oftentimes through ensuring that leadership is bought into the program and is visible and stated in their support for the program. And when that happens, it tends to create the kind of alignment that really facilitates good results in the program. We talked about an appropriate funding plan. There are a variety of different approaches we can take here to help our clients achieve a consistent, reliable, and appropriate funding plan for the set of objectives in the program, and we'll talk more about that. Ensuring clearly defined program management objectives and operating protocols and governance, as well as ensuring that we have the bandwidth to implement that strategy, whatever it is. Again, these are multifaceted programs. They involve touch points with a lot of key internal and external stakeholders, talking about issues that have high importance to all those that are impacted. And so it's really important that we have strong governance and understandings and the ability to really take the time to manage through a successful audit and derive the full value benefit that can come from the work. And we've got some great ideas on how to accomplish that. And then finally, really looking at the audit as an opportunity to enhance the supplier relationship. Well, nobody likes to get audited. However, it's been quite common for us to audit the same supplier over the years for the same client multiple times, and oftentimes when we come back the second or third time years later, they have recognized at that point that that there were a lot of substantial benefits that came to them through the audit process, and so I think when we have sensitivity around potential key supplier relationships, I think it's really a matter of putting a good strategy in place, educating internal stakeholders, and having them understand all the many positive benefits that can come through an audit program such as this, even when we're touching the most significant supplier relationships that they have. So we have specific talking details around each one of these. I think when we can successfully address these, we're really setting ourselves up for a robust and sustainable program that can deliver on the value proposition that we've spoken to here. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim Albrecht and let him speak about each one of these individually. Jim?
Thank you, John. That was a good overview of what we're going to cover now in the next few slides. So we'll step through each of the 4 building blocks one by one. First of all, the top to bottom alignment. So one of the most important steps to prepare for a contract compliance audit program is to clearly define the objectives of the program and then communicate that to your stakeholders. Having viable executive support for these programs goes a long way toward creating that alignment. If the objective is historical cash recoveries, then that needs to be made clear so that all involved are working to maximize cash recoveries. If, on the other hand, it's more important to focus on gap mitigation and future savings, then that needs to be communicated as the program objective. More and more, as you were saying earlier, we are seeing companies that may have historically been focused on cash recoveries really shifting their emphasis to mitigating the risks and reducing the gaps in order to avoid the same types of issues going forward, and then in turn generate those future savings. We recommend a balanced approach that equally emphasizes both historical recoveries and future savings. Although cash recoveries are important and can ultimately be used to fund the program, it really would be short-sighted to overlook the opportunity to plug the leaks and avoid future overcharges and erosion of profit. We believe this is the best approach, and really the marketplace reflects that more and more every day. In addition to the objectives, setting a governance structure is important to build in a reporting and escalation process into the program so that all are fully informed before settlement actions are taken and to ensure the program maximizes that ROI. Stakeholders should be educated around the fact we expect errors to occur. The focus of the audit is to identify the errors, maximize historical recoveries, and develop a plan for future savings through contract changes and operational adjustments. Alignment from leadership throughout the organization is proven to be an effective management model to capitalize on the value generated from a contract compliance audit program. Next slide. So self-funding. Sustainable high ROI programs are best funded through a combination of hourly and hybrid, which is really a combination of contingency and hourly fee structures. Where these compensation structures are well aligned to program and project objectives, with all parties making an investment in the process, the program is positioned for optimal results. The simplest and most direct way to accomplish this funding approach is with an established budget that gets reimbursed through historical recoveries. However, it is sometimes the case that companies are unable to secure a budget to fund the program in this manner. And if that's the case, there are funding approaches which can accomplish the same results of a budget-enabled program even when no budget exists. The one option for self-funding sustainable program is to accumulate recoveries into a central audit reserve, which is used in turn to fund the program. The audit reserve can be structured to be a joint investment from both your company and the audit firm. This is a proven method to build a more successful program by having what you might call skin in the game through a hybrid-based structure. Companies certainly have direct costs associated with the hybrid rate audit structures, but consideration should also be given to indirect costs, such as internal management and sponsorship costs. These costs can be underwritten with a self-funding model that continues to replenish the audit reserve through recoveries from additional supplier audits. The remaining portion can be allocated to the cost center or elsewhere on a periodic basis. An alternative option to consider is to treat current fiscal year recoveries different from prior fiscal year recoveries. Since the books are closed on prior years, it may be inappropriate to credit current year budgets with prior year recoveries. By distinguishing in this way, the audit reserve could be fed and replenished from prior year recoveries, and only current year recoveries would go back to the original cost center. In order to provide a sustainable funding mechanism, companies should consider a variety of options which provide long-term benefits to the program as well as to the overall health of the organization. By taking the time to establish a solid funding structure that enables mutual investment in the program, companies establish a key structural pillar to the success of their audit program. If there is further interest in how to make this work within your environment, your audit firm should be able to assist you with some guidance. So once program objectives are established, it is vital to have a governance structure to provide program status updates and adherence to those objectives. The audit should maintain close communication with the program lead through weekly or biweekly status updates. This ensures progress is communicated regularly, roadblocks are identified early, and program objectives are kept forefront. These discussions are more tactical in nature normally. In addition, there are higher level updates provided to leadership on a monthly or usually quarterly basis. This is an opportunity to share successes, learnings, and any governance issues. These discussions are generally more strategic in nature and also involve future planning for taking action on lessons learned. For example, we may identify a systemic issue, for example, that might be maybe ambiguous contract language that we've identified. This may have applications across systems or contract types that need to be more generally communicated to reap the full benefits of the finding through broad implementation of corrective actions. As the program grows in acceptance, the capabilities associated with the program grow as well, from the unaware or exploratory stages over to adoption and adaption. Program value accelerates as you shift to the right on the graph and full benefit of the program is achieved. Program management is another key to success. Not all companies have the bandwidth available to properly manage the program and would benefit from an embedded professional program manager from your audit partner. A dedicated program manager eases the burden on your staff and would help to accelerate the program to the right side of the graph, again, where the greatest business value is achieved. When it comes to auditing key strategic relationships, it is important to consider how best to take the audits forward. Strategic partners should be actual partners that welcome this activity. Contract audits are intended to get things right so that what was negotiated by the parties appears on your invoices and that other financial terms and conditions are operating as expected. Audits should be considered a best practice that is designed to be a health check on the relationship. The audit may identify gaps in understanding of contract language, areas where both parties could benefit from process changes, and also highlight the need to address any old unprocessed items. Aged items are an indication of a problem, but the source of the problem is not always clear. Many times a contract compliance audit will help to shed light on the issues and correct the problem going forward. In the end, supplier relationships should be strengthened by going through the process. Once the supplier audit is completed, there can be a real sigh of relief that there are no more unknowns to deal with in the future. There will be an increased sense of transparency between the parties, which will provide for a more stable, trusting relationship into the future. Key suppliers are just that. They're vital to your business. Incorporating strategic suppliers into your program is a great way to reap the rewards, both in financial terms and also to confirm the partnership. That really summarizes those four building blocks, and I'll turn it back over to Sarah then for next steps.
Great, thanks, Jim. Now that we've heard from John and Jim about the benefits of a robust contract audit program, how to gain leadership alignment, self-fund the program, mitigate bandwidth challenges, and enhance the key supplier relationships, we'd like to talk now about how you can build your own robust contract audit program. The first step is to define your objectives. Are you recovery focused? Do you need to hit certain financial targets? Or maybe you're compliance focused. You need to ensure your vendors are adhering to the contract. Or maybe you're a mix in between. Though knowing the objectives is, as Jim discussed, having that top to bottom alignment on these is really a critical foundational block to the program's success. The next step is going to be establishing a funding plan. So working on a funding plan that aligns to your objectives. So for instance, if your objectives are more focused on making sure the program hits certain financial goals, then you'll want to align a funding plan that meets that, which might mean targeting high-risk suppliers with a recovery focus to fund the program, which could be very different than if your objectives are focused on identifying and addressing leakage points to drive stronger supplier relationships. In that case, you might build a self-funding program that regenerates funds to cover the non-recovery focused audit methods. Once you've got your objectives defined and your funding plan established, it's time to set up the program management model. As Jim discussed, there's various options for how to set up governance, identifying what roles will be needed depending on the size of the program you're looking to achieve, and then which roles you do in-house versus outsource, what sponsors are needed to support the program, and how to create a model that is sustainable. The next step in the process is to develop that program plan. So as John talked about earlier, the program plan needs to be centered around the goals, the funding plan, and the program management model to be successful. For example, if your goals are to build stronger supplier relationships with the least amount of leakage, and your funding plan is to be self-funded, and your program management model has strong sponsors, and you have audit firm support, you might choose to build a robust audit program that really focuses on maximizing these three facets to their fullest. Now, a different objective or a different funding plan or a different program model, any of those might change how you design your program. For example, less resource bandwidth might mean a smaller or more targeted program. Once everything is in place, then you're ready to launch your robust, sustainable program. It may seem daunting at first, so we help clients every day achieve their robust, sustainable programs. And we know it's not only possible, it's rewarding in many of the ways that John and Jim have shared earlier in this session. One thing we have seen to avoid pitfalls of that underperformance that John talked about, and given all the complexities of operating in the space, is the benefits of teaming with an experienced industry leader like PRGX. So now that we've covered why contract audit programs are important and how to build them, we'll turn it over to the audience for any Q&A. Okay, it looks like we've got a question that's come in. I think this one is probably for you, John. The question is, can you talk a little bit more about what types of audit techniques are used to mitigate systematic gaps?
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, sure. I think in the conversation earlier, we talked a little bit about the kind of the broader range of custom methodologies that can be coupled with the traditional contract compliance approach. And I will just use this as an opportunity to kind of plug another webinar we just recently completed, moving from reactive to proactive. So maybe Ashley, at the end, you can provide a little bit of guidance on how some of our listeners here might be able to find that that other webinar, but it kind of goes hand in hand with this one. But I will speak to that a little bit further. So, our approach here is typically to take the traditional contract compliance audit as the central methodology within a fully realized, robust, and sustainable commercial compliance audit program. For the reasons we talked about earlier. Number one, it's a great source of historical recoveries. It helps to fund the program. It generates, and enhances your profits and bottom line. But it also is such a great lead into where systemic issues may exist in your P2P environment, and it becomes a great opportunity then to design and apply one of these specific targeted methodologies to root out systemic risk. So the contract compliance audit is great in some respects, certainly when it comes to historical recovery, but certainly also when it comes to learnings that can lead to gap mitigation. But we also recognize that it may not always be the best approach when we see a specific type of problem that exists within your operating environment. So this is where the custom methodologies come into play. And when we can design and apply one of those targeted methodologies to a known risk area within your environment, then we really can drive value beyond what can be what can come out of the kind of the standard contract compliance audit approach, and really enhance overall value. And so really, I think that's another opportunity to drive out the systemic risk. So hopefully that covered it, Sarah. I'll turn it back to you.
Wonderful. It does look like we have another question in. I think, Jim, this one's probably for you. It is, self-funding sounds great. How long does it typically take to get to self-funding?
That's a very good question, actually. We've really found that it's important to have an initial phase to a program so that you can set a foundation for the self-funding, because obviously you're not going to be self-funding from day one. In the initial phase, there may be more of a focus on building the reserves so that the future audit recoveries are used to replenish the reserve in the future. So carefully choosing supplier audit candidates in that initial phase is really important so that can happen. So there can be various ways that can be done in terms of delaying charges from the audit firm, maybe getting some buy-in from the audit firm as well to delay some of their billing, so that audit reserve can be built up, so that you have something to work from. Another option really to consider also is if there's an AP audit that's being done, an accounts payable audit that's being performed, to maybe use some of the proceeds from that activity to also help, fund that initial reserve, sort of prime the pump, if you will. So I think what's probably most important there is it can be done fairly quickly, but it's probably best to really work with your audit partner directly to establish a program that works well within your particular environment, because every company is going to be somewhat different with different factors to consider. But certainly it's something that can be done with a little bit of planning and really setting up the objectives of the program. That really is one piece of that objective, is how do you make sure that the reserve is set properly so that there can be that sustainability to the program so it can continue on and audit all the areas that you want to have covered.
Great, thanks, Jim. Looks like we've got another question. This one, I think, John, might go back to you. It seems like hard dollar recoveries are what gets the most attention when talking about contract audit programs. How do you recommend building an awareness and understanding of the significance and importance of the future cost savings value these programs deliver?
Gotcha. Okay. Well, it is an interesting question, and one that we have encountered before. It's not hard to understand why hard cash recoveries get the attention that they do, because they are more exact and real in terms of cash and P&L impact and so forth. So it is something that's more accurately measurable and understandable. However, it's also just very critically important to recognize that the prevention and future cost savings value is just as real, and it may be harder to measure, and it may not reflect itself as directly in your financial results, in your measurable financial results. But it is important to to call those out and to really make them clearly apparent. And one thing that we have found, one strategy we have found in the past, is to team with our procurement partners and to align their own internal cost savings goals and objectives to the cost savings that's derived, future cost savings that's derived through the audit program. And when we can achieve that alignment, so that we're really feeding into these goals and objectives that our clients already have, that we it really becomes more measurable, understandable, and recognized as a clear benefit of the program. And so I would say the most important element to building this awareness is reporting. So I think we really, what we try to do is we try to make it very clear that not only are the benefits of the program derived through the historical cost recoveries, and we measure and report on those, of course, but we also do the same when it comes to the future cost savings aspects, doing our best and working with our clients to put a reasonable value estimation associated with those future cost savings, and reporting and really emphasizing that as a key outcome of our work. And when we can do that successfully and have a client that's supportive and aligned to that approach, we know that the benefits become much more apparent, and it really builds support for the program overall when we can really show that combined benefit. And obviously, it's going to go a long way towards driving up the return on investment computation at the same time, because of the clear multiplier effect that comes into play when we start talking about the future cost savings component that I talked to earlier. So those are my thoughts on that one, Sarah.
Yeah, I would just add to that, John, that as you think about that original waterfall slide early in the presentation, that the historical recoveries are very defined, they're very tangible, very easy to quantify, and then you move over to the supplier gap mitigation, where it's maybe a little bit more of an estimate. But then when you move on further to the right, then on that graph where it's the more systemic, that's where it gets a little more difficult to quantify that. But I think working together with your audit firm, you'll be able to come up with a way to to put some numbers around that so that you can really see what is the true benefit, what is the real ROI on the program. And so it will take a little bit of additional effort there, and that's really part of the whole reporting mechanism, as John was saying, that we bring that learning loop back to leadership to be able to say, these are the things that are being done, and here are the benefits that are occurring, and these are the benefits that are occurring into the future with this supplier, but also these are the benefits that are happening more systemically across maybe a full category or across certain types of vendors or so forth. So it's a little more challenging, but certainly can be doable, and it's important to make sure that everybody understands the value that's being generated through the program.
For sure.
Back to you, Sarah.
That's really great advice. Thank you both. I'm not seeing any other questions come in from the audience, so I will turn it back over to Ashley.
Thanks, Sarah. So I'd like to thank our three presenters today, John, Jim, and Sarah, and we thank you all for listening in on today's webinar. The recording will be added to the PRGX website. And we've also got some great on-demand webinars as well. And as John noted earlier, we've got some specific to contract compliance, implementing proactive auditing strategies and moving from reactive to proactive. So you can access these by heading to the PRGX Global Bright Talk channel, or you can head to the resources section on our website, which is prgx.com. And as far as this webinar goes, we'd really appreciate if you could provide a rating and some feedback in the box below the video. And lastly, if you'd like to speak with a PRGX expert on contract compliance, please also head to our website to get in touch. So we thank you all again for joining today.